we talk about cookies, what are the first things that pop into our heads? A gleeful moment of guilty pleasure? A well-deserved reward for a jolly bearded man in a red suit? A comforting midnight snack on restless nights? Or yummy treats sold by cute little girls in vests covered in badges? Whatever the case, who doesn't love a good, old-fashioned cookie? But wait, what is a cookie exactly? The word cookie comes from the medieval Dutch term for little cake and is made up of 6 major components: flour, eggs, fat, sugar, leavening, and flavorings.
Made up of mostly starch and protein, flour forms the backbone of the cookie. Proteins are long chain-like molecules that can get tangled together to create a larger network. 2 proteins in flour, when in contact with water, help create this network: gliadin and glutenin. These 2 proteins tangle together to form gluten. Stirring and kneading the dough encourages the formation of more gluten. This gluten gives dough its many magical abilities. Gliadin, shaped like a ball, makes the cookie dough plastic. That is, it gives the dough the ability to change its shape under pressure. Glutenin, shaped like long spring coils, help make the dough elastic. That is, it helps dough to spring back to its original shape after being deformed. In cookie terms, the more gluten formation there is, the tougher and drier your cookies will be, while less gluten formation leads to more crumbly, soft cookies. Starch accounts for the majority of the flour. When combined with water, starch granules absorb water and swell up to make more than half the volume of the cookie and set to form the structure of the cookie. These swollen granules penetrate the gluten network, which helps tenderize the cookies. Now you may be wondering where all the water to activate the flour for a cookie dough comes from. After all, your average cookie dough recipe never calls for a cup of water to be added anywhere.
Eggs. Eggs generally provide most of the water in a cookie along with proteins that help bind the flour particles together. The yolk of the egg adds fat, which enriches and moistens the cookies. The fats also weaken the gluten network, which contribute to making the cookies more tender. Cookie recipes that call for more eggs result in cookies that have more of a tender, cake-like texture.
Speaking of fats from egg yolks, another huge component of making cookies delicious, tender, and buttery is, well, butter, or more generally, fat. Along with adding flavor and richness, when butter melts, it lubricates the particles and allows them to spread as the cookies bake. Fats also interfere with the formation of the gluten network to make the cookie more tender, and in recipes that don't call for as much egg, the 15% water content in butter also provides moisture to activate the proteins and starch in flour.
This brings us to another major component of cookies: sweet sugar, otherwise known as glucose, which has a chemical formula of C6H12O6. When whipped in with butter, air is introduced into the dough, which lightens the texture of the cookies. Sugar particles can also interfere with the gluten network by competing with the proteins for water.
And now we're left with an unfamiliar word: leavening. Leavening? Leavening? What is this word anyway? Leavening comes from a root word meaning light or having little weight, and is the ingredient that fills dough with bubbles of gas. In bread, the leavening agent is commonly yeast, a group of fungi that eat sugar and produce gas. But when it comes to cookies, the most commonly used leavening is baking powder. Baking powder is simply a combination of baking soda and acid. Baking soda, known chemically as sodium bicarbonate or NaHCO3, reacts with acid to form bubbles of carbon dioxide, or CO2. Think back to your classic baking soda and vinegar volcano eruption experiment. These little bubbles encourage your cookies to puff up and become less dense and instead light and tender.
And now comes the fun part: flavorings. What makes each person's cookie unique to themselves? Whether you're a classic chocolate chip cookie kind of person or can't get enough of cinnamon sugar-coated snickerdoodles, the possibilities are endless. Today we'll share one of our favorites with you, the peanut butter cookie. What you'll need: all-purpose flour, salt, baking soda, baking powder, unsalted butter, light brown sugar, granulated sugar, your favorite peanut butter, vanilla extract, and eggs. Step 1. Preheat your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Whisk the flour, salt, baking soda, and baking powder together in a large bowl. Step 2. In another bowl, beat the butter and sugars together until they are light and fluffy. Then add in the peanut butter until it is fully incorporated. Slowly mix in the flour mixture until it is fully combined. Roll the dough into balls and lay them on baking sheets, and then bake it until the edges are golden and the centers have puffed. This will take about 10 to 12 minutes. Step 5. Eat.